Prepping for a Career as a Software Engineer with Henry Quillin.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host for helping you and your teams move fast, deliver quality, and to run your software with confidence in Azure, all while using everything the .NET ecosystem has to offer. The podcast is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a software architecture company that empowers .NET teams to be self-sufficient and able to deliver world-class results. They are hiring architects and .NET engineers who'd like a path to become an architect. So you can go to clearmeasure.com/careers. And finally, be on the lookout for the new video shows that are coming pretty soon. We have a very exciting guest for today. His name is Henry Quillin, and he is a high school senior interested in software development, entrepreneurship, and blockchain and crypto. And he's completed several internships already and other contracts, and also recently earned the rank of Eagle Scout in the Boy Scouts of America. And he always has several projects going, including projectNEWM, an attempt to decentralize the music industry. And when not buried in VS Code or school books, he enjoys weightlifting, cooking, and listening to his favorite podcasts. And you can check out his website at henryquillin.me. That's Henry, Quillin.me. Henry, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Now, catch us up. We're going to kind of get into where you are, but you're just about to graduate high school and then go off to a computer science program at some lucky college who's going to get you, right?
That is true. That is the plan as of right now. Yeah. Awesome.
Well, let's jump more into that. But I always like to back up with the guests and kind of talk about what led up to this. And so, with you, before we get into how you're prepping for your career as a programmer, how did you know that you were interested in computers just in general? Do you remember?
Well, I think my first introduction to computers was when it was in fourth grade, and I wanted a computer so I could play all the cool video games that I'd been seeing. And my dad convinced me to build my own computer. So spent a lot of time, searching for parts and kind of getting into that whole world. And that was like really my first introduction to computers. So I built my computer, and I actually I kind of stumbled upon coding from one of my friends. He showed me this language called .bat, and it was just super simple, but you could write these cool little adventure games on the command line with it. And I got really fascinated with it. So while my friends were, playing video games, I was kind of making them.
Nice.
And so I kind of kept coding all the way throughout middle school and into high school. And I at that point, I didn't really see it as a career for me. It was just like a hobby, something that I loved doing. I never really took a step back and thought that this is what I wanted to do like for the rest of my life. I actually wanted to be an architect. So I was always interested in like math and art. I spent a lot of time drawing. And so I thought, architecture would be kind of the perfect combination of those two interests. So in middle school, I was able to convince Jackson Ryan Architects, which is an architecture firm in Houston, to let me work for them. Started out as just an unpaid kind of shadowing deal. And eventually that morphed into a paid internship. And so I worked for them for about a year and a half. And, it was kind of like my first introduction to the professional environment. Definitely gave me something to have on my resume. But I did realize that I didn't want to be an architect. So I remember, in between projects at the firm, I would be kind of trying to, I'd be on like Code Academy and stuff, doing like coding projects. And And I still like, it was just something that I was doing for fun. Like it still didn't really click in my head that I wanted to pursue this as a career. So after I did that internship, I actually started getting really into like entrepreneurship, and I wanted to pursue entrepreneurship and kind of create something, anything. So I started a really, rudimentary e-commerce business. And it started as something, I was just kind of building the website after school and trying to like make a brand, on Photoshop and whatnot. Then school got canceled due to COVID. Our spring break kind of turned into like 10-month spring break. So I had a lot of time on my hands. And I decided that I was going to go all in on this, little business that I had going. And so I launched the site. I had, set up manufacturers and kind of spent many months just doing the kind of the prerequisite stuff to get it going. And so that summer, I kind of spent my entire time just immersed in that whole world of marketing and customer service and sales, and just really immersed in that kind of environment. And I actually scaled it up to a decent amount. And I had some companies reaching out who wanted to purchase my brand. It was called Edge Wireless Power. I sold little electronic gadgets. And so by the end of the summer, school was coming around. There was no way I was going to manage school and this business. So I kind of saw that as an opportunity to exit. So I sold the company to a team in the UK. And so I had that off my plate. But what it taught me was that whatever I want to do, I really wanted to involve entrepreneurship in some way. And that's when computer science really kind of clicked in my head that like, that's what I want to do. So I realized that, I'd been coding all this time, just something that was fun. And it kind of clicked that this could be a tool that I could use to scratch my entrepreneurial itch, right? You can build anything with code. And so I envisioned, building a software company that, could affect a lot more people than, a simple e-commerce business. So
yeah,
I decided that like, that's the career I want to pursue. Not only is it very stable, but it also will allow me to, break off and do entrepreneurial things. Right. So I've been kind of building a lot of different projects. Up to that point, I had an internship experience already. And so I kind of started building like a website and trying to make myself marketable to potential employers. I wanted to get experience in the field, just like I did with architecture, because I learned that, you can't know if you want to do something unless you actually work in the industry. Like if I didn't have that internship at Jackson Ryan Architects, I probably would still be thinking I want to be an architect,
Right.
So I did a small little internship at a web development boot camp. And then after that, I was able to get an internship at an investment management firm. And then there I was kind of doing more data science stuff. So I worked with pandas and Python, NumPy. So I learned I didn't really want to do data science either, which is another great thing that I think, another great thing about internships and why I think they're so valuable is that you learn what you don't want to do. So I learned that data science really wasn't for me. I didn't really feel like I was building things. I felt like I was just like analyzing stuff, which wasn't exactly what I was interested in. So after that, I kind of, and those were all unpaid, right? I was still super young, and they were all kind of taking a chance on me. But I felt like at this point, I kind of had the skills to bring some real value to companies. So this was in my 11th grade year, and I started preparing for technical interviews and just sending out so many cold emails and going on different hiring sites and just trying to put myself out there. And I got an internship at I got a product management internship at a startup called Original Nations. And yeah, so that was my first paid internship in the tech industry. So of course, I had the Jackson Ryan internship, which was paid, but I was super stoked that now I was getting a paid position in something that I was really interested in. So, and at this position, I really got to see the development process from a bird's eye view. This was my first introduction to Agile and Scrum. And I kind of was, a conduit between the senior executives and the development team. So I wrote a lot of acceptance criteria and things like that. And I think that gave me a really good foundation for my next experience, which was working for ClearMeasure. And at ClearMeasure, I really went nitty gritty into the code. So I kind of applied everything that I learned, and I was able to, create real, apply it to real problems. And so that was really fulfilling for me. And especially seeing everything I learned from my internship at Original Nations, being able to be on the other side of the table and actually writing the code. So that was this summer. And I learned so much from that, test-driven development, and how to write code efficiently, not just how to write code, period. Because I think that right now in the industry, there's definitely a lot of people who are just writing code and not really thinking about how to write it the most efficient manner. And so that's why I'm really grateful for being able to have that experience at such a practice-driven organization that is so organized. So after that was this summer. I started really getting into blockchain, and initially I saw it as an investment, but the more I learned about it, the more I got really into the technology behind it. I started going onto different forums and the different Discords and Telegram groups. There's really a huge community around these different technologies, especially getting into certain projects like Cardano or Solana, Ethereum. There's a huge community of people who want to help and who want to connect you with different opportunities. So I was connected with a guy named Ryan Jones, who is the founder of a project that I'm super passionate about, which is called projectNEWM. He connected me with his CTO, and I was able to land a position working for them. And I'd be happy to talk more about projectNEWM. Just the one sentence pitch of it is that it's a decentralized Spotify. But I'd love to kind of go more in depth about that. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm leading the front end development for projectNEWM. When I joined, I think we were around 6 or 7 people, and we're up to almost 18. So there's been super fast growth, and I'm really excited for the future. So that's kind of my story, and yeah.
So you just listed off 7 different jobs, and lots of teenagers have various jobs in the summer or Christmas break, whatnot. But 6 of them are related to computers and software specifically. The first one you mentioned was architectural firm, and that's so powerful to say, "Oh, this is interesting," and then you go find a way to work in a company that does that, and then you realize, yeah, I can't see myself doing this for a long time.
Well, yeah, I think there's nothing that is more revealing about a particular field than just completely immersing yourself in it, and kind of just jumping into the fire. And another thing is a lot of these, it sounds crazy that a high schooler was able to do that. But one thing I've learned is that companies are it's not like these companies are just reluctantly taking me on, okay, we'll give them a chance. It's really a win-win situation, right? Because they don't have to pay me anything. I'm willing to work and do anything, right? I'm just an eager high schooler. But the other side is okay, maybe this kid could do some real work for us. And as he develops as a person and as he matures, he kind of grows with our company. And he can become a really valuable asset. So I think there's, if you just put yourself out there and really reach out to different companies in your area. Like, I don't think people my age really understand what they're capable of. So like for me, where I found like the greatest success in achieving in getting these positions is through cold emailing. So you draft up um, an email and you change it for every company, and you just find as many companies in your area as you can, and you put yourself out there. And guess what? You're going to get rejected by most of them. But if you send 100 emails, you might get 10 interviews. If you get 10 interviews, you might get 3 offers. And so I actually had more offers than I had option than I could work. So
Yeah.
I had to turn people down, which I was like, wow, like this is kind of crazy. So yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is like even if you feel unqualified, like the best way to learn is to just jump into it. A lot of the things that I've learned is through trial by fire, right? Like, you're given a task and you may not really know how to do it. But the great thing about being a kid is that your brain is just so malleable. It's like a sponge. And so you can just pick up things really quickly. And I think that's, something that is really valuable about high schoolers. Is like they're really flexible and really adaptable. And guess what? They'll do whatever you tell them to do.
Yeah.
Without, they're not going to be like, oh, I've got I'm going on a vacation. Like they're willing to work if you give them an opportunity. So I think there's definitely value in offering high schoolers internships. And if you're a high schooler, like just put yourself out there.
Yeah. Good advice. And so you had several positions that were not paid. And, of course you can go work for Chick-fil-A for, $13 an hour. I think they advertise in a lot of places, and there's all kinds of other places that, you can make a little bit of money, but this is an investment in your future career. The way I think about it with unpaid internships, or just even volunteering, because there's the thought of, oh, I need to wait until I'm legally able to work. There's no limit on the age where you can just volunteer somewhere. And, and I mean, you can do that at 10 years old. And so if you're 12 years old and you could still pitch yourself, hey, can I volunteer at your business? You don't have to wait until you're 16. And, you're prepping you've already been accepted to a few universities. They're not going to pay you for your time to learn there. Actually, you pay them for, and your expectations, you're going to learn something. You didn't have to pay these companies to learn. And a few of them paid you.
I mean, I think when you're in high school, like it's such a valuable time, because guess what? You don't have to pay rent. Your parents are providing food for you. Now, of course, this is not true in all situations, but for most people, that is the case. And, I think just, like volunteer your time, and you'll get so much out of it. The return on investment is priceless, really. I actually worked at a restaurant for a little while, and it was the biggest waste of time ever. Like making $10 an hour is so, and what people don't realize is like, the work that you do right now at this age, my age and younger, it's going to completely change the trajectory of your life. Like every decision you make is going to affect you for so long, because you have so much of your life ahead of you. So, just making $10 an hour that you can go spend on, on Chipotle or whatever, like it's, in my opinion, you're literally losing money.
Hey, Chipotle is pretty good.
I will not argue with you about Chipotle, but I think that, I don't know. I feel like, just the amount of time that I had as a high schooler, and I'm really glad that I kind of focused it in the way that I did. But I think that if there's any other young people hearing this, like the best way for you to spend your time is to spend it learning. And the best way to learn things is to just immerse yourself in the subject. The best way to immerse yourself in a subject is to work for someone for free. It's going to have to be free at the beginning. Nobody's going to give
you
you,
just volunteer.
You're going to have to volunteer at the start, and that's totally fine. And that'll lead you to be able to get a paid position like, I was able to get. And so, I think it's extremely valuable, and it's also easier than a lot of people imagine. So, a lot of kids are kind of spending a lot of time like, in sports and in extracurriculars and things. And those are great, but a lot of it is like, people are thinking about, I need something for college. I got to play piano so that, my resume will look like I've got a bunch of different activities. But, those 10 hours, 15 hours a week that you're spending on that, if you just devoted that to doing something unique, like finding internships, starting a business, anything like that, it's like the time commitment is the same, if not less, than that extracurricular activity. But the return on investment is crazy big, because no one else is doing that. And college admissions counselors, and I'm kind of saying this from the point of someone who's trying to get into college, right? Like they see that and they think, how did this kid do that? When they see someone who's won a bunch of piano competitions, they're like, okay, that's really impressive. He put a lot of time into that. When they see someone who's created and sold a business, they're like, I don't even know how that's possible. And like, even though I might have put less time into that than the other person who's done piano and track and whatever, it's like I come out on top because I'm doing something more unique. And I think that that's something that a lot of kids miss. And that's true, not just as a young person, but I think it's also true as an adult, right? I think doing things that are unique are much more valuable, and can bring you a much better return on the time that you spend doing that thing than just following the path, right?
Many thanks to our podcast sponsor, ClearMeasure. ClearMeasure is a software architecture company that empowers clients' development teams to be self-sufficient, moving fast, delivering quality, and running their systems with confidence. Whether starting a new project or developing new technologies or techniques, ClearMeasure sets up your team to deliver world-class results. Learn more at www.clearmeasure.com. ClearMeasure, empowering software delivery.
Now, this podcast is for programmers, and so we kind of all anything related to code, and we're just saying, right on, man. And but I have one of my children whose passion is music and theater. And as I was hearing you describe the restaurant and the architecture company, and then the rest of the companies where you were programming, you describe them, and the way you describe them is you're coming alive in your recounting of that experience. And then the others, it really didn't enhance your life. But
yeah,
I would posit that for the people who are really passionate about either food or restaurants or hospitality, they go work in a restaurant and they're in their element, and and then maybe they're thinking, they're doing this. Maybe I could start a restaurant someday, and I'm gonna do it how they do it over here, or I'm not gonna do it the way they do it because it's not working. But they're thinking, and the piano, if they are passionate about piano and piano is their thing, what I'm hearing as you describe it is you've discovered what makes you come alive, and so anything else is like, oh, it's a waste of time, because you figured out and you experience what it's like to actually work within your passion and how it makes you feel. And anything else, it just doesn't give you that same sense.
Yeah, I mean, when I was working in the restaurant, I paid a lot of attention to like the managers who would come in and take stock, and I was like, and I realized I was kind of learning how the restaurant business worked, and I was like, you know what, I mean, if I wanted to, like, if you wanted to start a restaurant, like that would be the best thing you could do, is work in a restaurant and see how that works. I mean, I learned a lot about how restaurants work, and I also learned that I don't want to start a restaurant because there's a lot, like it's a lot of work. But if that's something you want to do, absolutely go do that. You can learn so much from that. But whatever you do, I think it's important to just don't just learn about what the thing is, like by reading or whatever. You need to actually engage in that field or that subject, whether it's through employment, whether through it's some kind of entrepreneurial venture, or whether it's through just immersing yourself, in like, for example, piano, starting like a piano YouTube channel or something. I think that's, but I think the main thing that is important is like, do something unique. Like, don't just follow what everyone else is doing.
Okay. So let's turn it back to programming, because that's what you're gearing up for. And whether or not you have a answer you've thought out or not around here, there's a lot of discussion among older generations who are maybe sending children to college about the price of universities, and then just thinking, okay, prices have doubled, tripled, quadrupled in many areas in the last 20 years. And then looking at the return on investment, what's the current calculation, or has that been a topic of discussion just in the process of applying?
Well, it really depends on what you're studying, and so I'm going to keep it within the realm of computer science. The main thing about studying computer science in university is that you have companies, and this is of course depending on which school you go to. You have companies standing right outside your dorm room, figuratively, who are basically handing you an internship offer, right? There's especially at some of these top schools, MIT, Harvard, Stanford, and then that's what I'm really looking for. And I do have a lot of experience. My college counselor was asking me, like, why are you even going to college? Like, you could just start working. I've already been offered. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, he was like, absolutely. Like, what is your reason for going to college? I'm actually have been offered full-time positions, and I could just continue going down the path that I'm going down. And so there's a few different reasons why I personally find value in college. And of course, this is going to change for a lot of different people. For me, the main one is an environment where I can take risks without having to worry too much about like the negative impact that it might have. So, for example, a school that's like at the top of my list right now is MIT, and MIT has an overwhelming amount of resources for entrepreneurs, startup labs, and funding opportunities, and it's just like a melting pot of innovation. And I want to immerse myself in a community like that. Now, I'm going to be totally honest. Some of these, a lot of schools may not have that, and that's not exactly what I'm looking for, right? I'm looking for a place where I'm going to be surrounded by people who are smarter than me. I want to be the dumbest person in the room. People are going to bring me up, and I think college is a great place for that. Now, of course, in today's day and age, you can get have an amazing career in software development without ever going to college. There's boot camps. You can be a self-taught developer. I know someone who's did 2 years of school, and then or she got like an associate's degree, only 2 years, and now she's working for Google. So it's definitely possible. And I think that's a decision that you're going to have to really think to yourself. And like, yes, you can think about it as, in terms of like an ROI, but there's a lot of things that college offers that you can't really calculate. Relationships, having a kind of in between high school and going right into adult life. And so I think that there's a lot of things to consider there. So yeah, I mean, I would say if you have a lot of experience already, and like you just want to be a software engineer, and you kind of know your path already, college may not be for you, right? There's so many resources. And everything's online. Like, I'm going to be totally honest. I'm not going to college to learn how to code. I already know how to code.
Yeah.
I'm going to college to meet people and to, benefit from the many resources it has. Now, would I pay full price for any of these schools? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So if I don't get a good amount of scholarships, an option for me is just not go to school. And so it's largely a kind of personal thing that you have to weigh. Do you value having a time where you can just kind of have fun and like relax a little bit before you become an adult? Okay, well, that's a valid reason. Do you want a place where you'll have a bunch of internship opportunities, right? Like a lot of these schools have really great career fairs and stuff. So it's just a matter of kind of weighing your values and kind of thinking about it in that sense. But absolutely, a college degree is not necessary at all, or it's not required to become a software developer. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Your counselor asked that. The local high school near us has kind of trade school openings because, for instance, plumbers and welders are in great need. And just like programmer, I think the welder has a 24-week training program, and then you start work at $40,000 a year. And then if you go into an industrial welding or underwater welding, you're over 6 figures salary as a welder, which is fantastic. And it's not a 4-year degree. It's a 24-week initial training program. So it's not just a cut and dry decision. It's actually phenomenal that there are so many opportunities to learn how to do something that people need. And if that clicks with you, and if that just inspires you, and it's like, okay, you get motivated and you get passionate to learn it and get good. Now, as we kind of come to the end of the show here, I can hear some of the listeners say, "Man, I wish I had that opportunity when I was younger or whatnot." I bet you he had this top-notch computer when he was learning to code, and he built his own computer, and he's got all this, whatnot. When you were learning how to code and do these, what kind of computer did you have? You said you built one.
Oh my gosh, my computer is right next to me, and it is like literally falling apart. The case is actually.
So you're still using the same computer?
No, I'm not using it anymore because I don't know. It would take like 10 minutes to turn on, but so it's not that good of a computer. Yeah, but I had that computer for most of my high school career. I only recently got this laptop. So, I mean, yeah, it's what you make of the resources that you have, really. A faster computer is definitely not going to make up for any kind of programming skills. And, a lot of, also, like, I got a computer from you guys at ClearMeasure. So, if you can show that you have skills, like many places are willing to provide that kind of equipment.
Yeah. Well, any employer is going to provide good equipment as well. So as we close up, there's a lot of programmers who are already in the field listening, but they probably know other high schoolers who are thinking about programming and whatnot. And I remember hiring a couple of years back 2 apprentices straight out of a computer science bachelor's degree. One thrived and just was loving everything. And the other one, after 3 weeks, came and said, I've been doing this every day. I don't think programming is for me. And he told me that after doing all the work to earn a computer science bachelor's degree. And then 3 weeks into actually doing it, he learned that it wasn't for him. And my heart broke for him. Mm-hmm. And so, what for anyone listening who has a high schooler who's kind of dabbling or thinking about it, or any people in the same position who've been past this podcast episode, what advice would you give them to help them find what they're passionate about? Like it sounds like you found.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you really just have to. You got to try. Like he didn't understand that it wasn't for him until he actually started doing the work. You cannot study a topic and learn about it. You might think it's amazing. I might love physics, but until I actually, try building something that, I need physics for, and I really need to apply these concepts, I might not know if I want to go into a career like as a physicist. So you really have to just put yourself out there and I would say try and get an internship in that field. In computer science specifically, I would say try and find a niche that you're interested in, and this will absolutely change. So like I said, I've done data science. I've done product management. I've done, I've worked in the .NET ecosystem. Now I'm working in, more like JavaScript and React kind of things. And you're gonna find what you don't like, and you're gonna find what you do like. And the only way you can know is by just working with the different things. And so for computer science, I'm sure there's people who are like, I kind of want to do computer science. I don't really have the skills to get an internship yet. I don't know if I want to spend all this time learning code and just to realize I don't know it. I would say, try and learn. And then there's a lot of open source projects that really aren't, there's not that high of a barrier to entry. And so you can, go on and make a pull request and ask, how can I get involved? And that's actually really similar to, working for a tech company as an engineer. It's really similar nowadays because everyone's remote. You're just kind of taking an issue and, making a pull request, writing some code. So if you can get to the point where you can do that and, provide some value to an open source project, I would say, try and do that. And that's a good way to kind of figure out if this is something you want to do, because let's be honest, building like a little battleship game is very different than trying to find a bug in a huge code base. Right. And I think that's what turns a lot of people off. Is like, they're like, oh, this is so fun. I'm like building stuff and they're, building an entire application, but it's like, it's just themselves. Once you start working with a bunch of other engineers and, you start encountering all these different libraries and systems and frameworks, it becomes almost overwhelming. So I would say, try and immerse yourself in that environment, whether it's open source, whether it's an internship. I think that's a really great way to know whether software engineering is for you. So that's my advice. If you're trying to figure out if you want to become a developer, just really try and get some experience.
Nice. And I will throw out just one more commercial since we are kind of getting up to springtime. If anyone is interested in either paid internships for this summer or are interested in volunteer positions, ClearMeasure hasn't announced yet, but I know that there will be several positions announced, and you can just get in touch, go to clearmeasure.com/careers and just reach out and say, hey, put my name on the list. I want to hear whenever those positions are announced. Because there's always every company, if they, I'll just speak to the manager out there. If you'll just say, yes, we'll accept some help, then worst case scenario, hey, there's a little bit of work gets done by a high schooler. Best case scenario, that high schooler gets a really good push start into a career. And so it's a win-win. Well, Henry, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate you telling your story, and you're gonna kill it transitioning to college and kind of launching your career and planning that out. And so you're just getting started, my friend.
I appreciate the kind words, and I'm so happy to have been able to talk today. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, my pleasure. And until next time, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.azuredevops.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.